In a move that has generated significant controversy, lawmakers in Gambia have decided to refer the attempted repeal of the 2015 ban on female genital cutting for further committee discussions. This decision has sparked concern among activists who fear that it could undermine years of work to protect girls and women from the practice. The legislation in question has been met with strong opposition from activists within the largely Muslim country. They argued that lifting the ban would pose serious risks to the health and well-being of girls, as female genital cutting remains a widely practiced tradition, often performed on girls younger than 5 years old. Haha Dukure, founder of Save Hands for Girls, a local organization dedicated to ending the practice, shared her concerns about the repeal. Dukure herself underwent the procedure and witnessed her sister's death to complications, stressed the importance of protecting women's rights. The bill backing the repeal has found support among religious conservatives in Gambia, who argue that it seeks to uphold religious purity and cultural norms. However, opponents warn that it could have far-reaching consequences on women's rights in the country. The former leader of Gambia, Yahya Jammeh, initiated the ban on female genital cutting in 2015. However, enforcement of the law has been weak, with only 2 cases prosecuted. Meanwhile, outside Gambia's parliament, protesters gathered to voice their opposition to the bill. Amidst the growing tension, police and riot gear were deployed to maintain order. With this issue now under further discussion, it remains uncertain how Gambia's lawmakers will ultimately decide. Stay tuned for more updates on this developing story.
Famine is raging through northern Gaza. Doctors Without Borders went into Gaza hospitals last week to assess the needs of residents with a UN-led convoy after the Israeli military launched an overnight raid on the Al-Shifa hospital in northern Gaza. Leo Kanz, the head of the mission, described the destruction as, quote, truly shocking, end quote. He also said that hospitals in Gaza have been attacked, some of them partially functioning. Israel has since asked the International Court of Justice not to issue emergency orders for it to step up humanitarian aid into Gaza. In a legal filing to the United Nations top court, Israel said it, quote, has real concerns for the humanitarian situation and innocent lives, as demonstrated by the actions it has and is taking, end quote. Israeli military operations are continuing into the night, according to an IDF spokesperson. The military said Hamas militants had regrouped at the hospital facility and were operating at Al-Shifa.
With Texas continuing to threaten its immigration, reporter Brandon Muth is here to tell us about how the Supreme Court has ruled to uphold a new controversial law. Brandon?
Thank you, Ernie. On Tuesday, March 19th, the Supreme Court allowed Texas to immediately begin enforcing a strict immigration enforcement law known as SB 4. The new law allows state police to arrest and detain people they suspect of entering the country illegally, CNN reported. With the dissension of 3 liberal justices, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, the court had a 6-3 conservative majority decision. The Supreme Court also rejected an emergency request by the Biden administration, which argued states have no authority to legislate on immigration. The approval of SB 4 allows judges the power to order migrants to be transported to a port of entry and returned to Mexico, regardless of their country of origin. In a filing with the U.S. Supreme Court earlier this month, the Biden administration wrote, quote, this court has long recognized that the regulation of entry and removal of non-citizens is inseparably intertwined with the conduct of foreign relations and thus vested solely in the federal government, end quote. On the other hand, Texas Governor Greg Abbott reacted to this decision on social media platform X, saying it was, quote, clearly a positive development, end quote. Concerns continue to escalate among immigration advocates of increased racial profiling, as well as detentions and attempted deportations by state authorities in Texas. While the SB 4 law is facing legal challenges at a federal appeals court, the decision made in the Supreme Court hands a significant yet temporary win to Texas. For the Cut Network, I'm Brandon Muth.
Thanks, Brandon. We will keep you updated on how this affects Texas.
With an increase in anti-trans legislation in recent years, reporter Abby Jurek is here to tell us how these laws are affecting those in the LGBTQ+ community. Abby?
Thank you, Emily. 16-year-old Nex Benedict died on February 8th, deemed by an Oklahoma medical examiner as a suicide. However, the day before their death, the non-binary teen was attacked by a group of classmates in the women's restroom. The bullies have yet to face any consequences. Even after a statement of condolence was released from President Biden, body cam footage from the hospital shows a police officer discouraging the family from filing a report against the classmates. The officer added that it would be a shame for any of the students to have to deal with a criminal situation for, quote, something so minuscule. After Nex's alleged overdose, the autopsy release also reported that they had multiple injuries to their head, neck, and torso. Lawyers say this shows, quote, the severity of the assault. Sue Benedict, Nex's guardian, told The Independent that Nex started being bullied at school shortly after Oklahoma's governor signed a bill in 2022 that forbade trans and non-binary youth from using bathrooms concurrent with their gender identities. Trans youth report that these legal restrictions on their freedom are having direct impacts on their mental health. For the Cut Network, I'm Abby Jurek.
Thank you, Abby. We'll update you if more comes out.
In a landslide victory, President Vladimir Putin secures his 5th term in Russia amidst widespread condemnation from the West. President Vladimir Putin extends his reign over Russia, whose outcome was never in doubt. Despite calls for protests against repression and the war in Ukraine, Putin's grip on power tightens. After the harshest crackdown on dissent since Soviet times, Putin's nearly quarter-century rule continues with 6 more years. Critics denounced the election as a sham, highlighting the absence of fair play and manipulation. Putin's victory comes amidst controversy, including the death of his political opponent Alexei Navalny, and the barring of anti-war candidates from the ballot. Independent monitoring was absent, raising concerns of electoral integrity. Putin, emboldened by his sweeping victory, pledges to advance deeper into Ukraine, raising tensions with the West, and analysts fear a potential escalation in the conflict and anticipate unpopular measures domestically. Despite international criticism, Putin garners congratulations from several world leaders, signaling a mixed response to his continued rule. The future of Russia under Putin's extended leadership remains uncertain.
With more concern over plane safety in recent months, here's reporter Matthew Marengo to tell you about what happened to a whistleblower who had safety concerns surrounding Boeing. Matthew?
Thank you, Emily. After the death of a whistleblower in the case against Boeing, a friend of the victim claims he predicted his own death. John Barnett, a former Boeing quality control engineer, was found dead in his car March 9th, the same day he was set to testify against the airplane manufacturing giant. While at first his death was ruled a possible suicide, many close to him have come out saying that there is no way that that's what happened. One close family friend of his even claimed recently that before his death, Barnett had told her, quote, if anything happens to me, it's not a suicide, end quote. His lawyers also came out with a statement saying that suicide doesn't make sense, as in the days before his death, he seemed in high spirits and was looking forward to getting the trial over with so he could go back to his normal life. Along with those close to Barnett, Boeing made a statement claiming, quote, we are saddened by Mr. Barnett's passing and our thoughts are with his family and friends, end quote. While the circumstances around his death are still unclear, the investigation is still ongoing. For the Cut Network, I'm Matthew Marengo.
Thank you, Matthew, for that report.
Supreme Court considers Biden administration stance on social media regulation. In a pivotal session, the U.S. Supreme Court indicated a likely lean toward supporting the Biden administration stance in the Murphy v. Missouri case. The dispute, a battleground between Republican-led states and the federal government, revolves around the extent to which officials can intervene in social media content regarding topics like COVID-19 and election security. During the arguments, justices appeared skeptical of claims by representatives from Louisiana, Missouri, and others, who accused the administration of exerting undue influence on social media platforms to suppress conservative viewpoints. Lower courts previously ruled in favor of the states, but the Supreme Court intervened, signaling its interest in the issue. Justices expressed concerns over potential ramifications on government platform interactions if the states were to prevail. Justice Amy Coney Barrett raised eyebrows when questioning whether the FBI could pressure platforms to remove posts without violating free speech rights. Similarly, Justice Brett Kavanaugh noted that a ruling favoring the states could complicate routine government communications. The case is part of a broader legal landscape surrounding social media and free speech. Recent weeks saw the court delineate guidelines on public officials blocking social media followers and hear arguments on state laws prohibiting content takedowns by large platforms. In defense of the administration, Justice Department lawyer Brian Fletcher argued against claims of coercion, highlighting the importance of government engagement on issues like national security and public health. Justices Elena Kagan and Kavanaugh, drawing from their White House experience, likened government platform interactions to those with traditional media. While a decision is pending, observers await the court's nuanced stance on balancing free speech with governmental influence in the digital age. Stay tuned for updates on the Murthy v. Missouri case with a decision expected by early summer. With disagreement between Biden and the president of Israel becoming more apparent, here's reporter Alana Goodman to tell us about their meeting. Alana?
Thank you, Ernie. President Biden and President Benjamin Netanyahu spoke by phone on Monday, March 18th, to discuss the war in Israel and Gaza. It has been a month since the two presidents spoke to talk about this major issue. Before, they were having weekly meetings to discuss updates about the war. Now it's been a while. Biden voiced out deep concerns about Israel's plans for the Rafah operation, according to his conversation with President Benjamin Netanyahu. Quote, a military plan cannot succeed without an integrated humanitarian plan and political plan, and the president has repeatedly made the point that continuing military operations need to be connected to a clear strategic endgame, Sullivan said at the White House CNN. Netanyahu told President Biden Israel is dedicated to completing different goals in Gaza and providing humanitarian aid. Chuck Schumer also called for new elections in Israel that would remove President Netanyahu from office. Biden is concerned with Rafah for different reasons, quote, that civilians sheltering in Rafah have nowhere safe to go, that Rafah is an entry point for critical humanitarian assistance, and that neighboring Egypt has voiced serious concerns about a potential military operation there, CNN. The two discussed possible negotiations for a ceasefire for several weeks, hoping that the hostages would be released. Quote, the president has repeatedly made the point that continuing military operations need to be connected to a clear strategic endgame, Sullivan said NBC News. For the Cut Network, I'm Alana Goodman reporting.
Thank you, Alana. We'll continue to provide more updates on the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine.
AI is being used in this year's March Madness, but the math is sometimes flawed. March Madness fans may want to pause before pinning their hopes on a perfect AI March Madness bracket. The advancement is not new, neither is the use of AI in bracketology. Even so, the bracket competition still leaves plenty of surprises for the computer users who spent their time honing in on models to perfection using past NCAA tournament results. Casual fans might find themselves spending a few days to a week deciding on a team's success, but the odds of crafting a perfect bracket are stacked. The exact odds are 2 to the 63rd power. No one has ever gotten a verifiably perfect bracket in the history of the NCAA tournament.
With constant advancements in AI, reporter Maria Loaiza is here to tell us why Apple is jumping on the bandwagon. Maria?
Thank you, Ernie. Artificial intelligence has had a global impact on everything from classrooms to assisting companies, but now it could be a much more clear, everyday reality. Apple is in discussion with Google about possibly working together to incorporate Google's Gemini AI program into Apple's next iPhone. Some of Apple's biggest competitors, including Samsung, has already added the chatbot Gemini into part of their phone's feature. For Samsung, Gemini serves as a way to edit videos and summarize audio recordings. However, the tasks AI can perform on phones is only expected to grow. For iPhones, AI features have been part of the equation as seen in facial recognition, enhancing Siri's user experience, and more. While this would not be Google's first time striking a deal with Apple, as Google pays more than $18 billion a year to be Apple's core search engine, the implementation of Gemini would put a lot more eyes on AI. According to the New York Times, quote, a deal could bring the Gemini model to iPhones around the world, giving Google access to a massive user base and making generative AI even more mainstream, end quote. Since there have been issues with the Gemini program in the past, if Apple does choose to implement it in their next iPhone, there will be a lot of eyes on Google. For the Cut Network, I'm Maria Loiza.
Thank you, Maria. We'll see what other advancements this partnership leads to.
In Hamburg, New York, a man was compelled to surrender his 11-foot, 750-pound pet alligator after local officials found that he kept the reptile unlawfully. The individual's possession of the massive alligator was deemed illegal, leading to its confiscation. Tony Cavallaro, the reptile owner, first got his scaly friend when it was only 2 months old. The SPCA removed the reptile because he was, quote, kept without a permit, end quote. Thousands have rallied on social media for Albert the alligator, even making shirts that say, "Bring Albert home." Do you think that you would keep a pet alligator?
Not an 11-foot, 750-pound alligator, but definitely
Exactly.
a baby alligator when they don't have a chance to kill
Yeah,
it.
something small. Are you going to be one of those people that returns it to the Everglades once it gets big?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I would probably do that, yeah.
It
Just
kinda
give it
makes
its life to roam around in the wild.
Be
But
free.
I do definitely like the name Albert the alligator.
Yeah.
Very catchy.
It rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into The Cut Network. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at @thecut_network and on Twitter @thecuttasu. Have a good night.